God is in the details. So you can do a lot with cheap materials, in my opinion. Being clear on what you want is very important, and that's a mistake. If you don't tell your architect, they're not mind readers. Don't worry about everything all the time. It's not worth it. Just put one foot in front of the other and do the best you can.
Thank you so much, Maria Luisa, for joining. Not Maria, Maria Luisa.
Very good.
Okay? Yeah, I was looking up, and and right now I was looking up. I was just, I don't know, I was like a little zoned out, and I just typed in Maria Luisa, and the first thing that came up was like this Queen of Spain, and I was like, oh, and I was like, oh, and I was like, oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. So, Maria Luisa, can you tell us about yourself and how you got into architecture? I know you've been doing it since you were a young girl visiting model homes, but tell us your story. How did you start?
Well, I just used to be interested in floor plans and going to model homes.
Hmm.
So when I wanted to go to I wanted to go to Catholic University,
Uh-huh.
and we were living in Macon, Georgia, because the year before I had been sent there to Catholic University to Washington D.C. to work to learn journalism so I could come back and be the editorial page editor of my high school newspaper.
Wow.
So I really loved Washington, so I told Dad I wanted to go to Washington. He says, Georgia Tech, it's right here. It's in
Yeah.
Atlanta. It's an
Yeah.
hour and a half away. You can't, no, forget Washington. And since I was always interested in model homes and drawing, I was good at drawing, things like that. I um, I went into city architecture. And again, my father said, no way, you're going to starve to death. If we were still in Cuba, we would have these wonderful relationships of wealthy people and you would do really well. But in this country, you're going to eat dirt. So that
Wow.
summer, I went to see my cousin in Ohio, and my cousin is a chemical engineer. He's a retired chemical engineer now. He
Hmm.
said, no, Maria Luisa, you have to go talk to your dad. If you're going to do this all your life, you have to pick something you like, not something he likes. He wanted me to study business.
Hmm.
So I went back to dad. He says, okay, you can study architecture, but Georgia Tech, it's right here, hour and a half away. We can keep an eye on you. And no, you can't have a car. Those were his exact words.
Oh my God.
So I started at Tech, and it was really a lot of fun. It was really, really hard. If anybody thinks Georgia Tech is easy, take that thought and put it away because it's really, really hard.
Hmm.
But it's also a lot of fun. I joined a sorority, I had a really good time. Um, it was really, it's Atlanta. Atlanta had a
Hmm.
lot of clubs that, we'd open a new one every weekend, and it was really a lot of fun. I just had a great time on top of working my butt off. It was really hard. So then I came to Miami. I graduated, and the funny thing is, I thought that Atlanta was having a recession.
Hmm.
I didn't understand that recessions are nationwide.
Yeah.
So I moved to Miami thinking that it was like Barcelona because I spent the summer before working in an architecture office on a student exchange program in Barcelona.
Hmm.
So I thought Miami was like Barcelona. I have no idea where I got that idea because we used to vacation here. And in
Yes.
1976, Miami was not like Barcelona at all. Now we have sidewalk cafes, but back then there was no sidewalk cafes.
Yeah.
It was a completely different, much more provincial city. But I, like all things I do, I'm very persistent.
Hmm.
So and my cousin was very helpful. He said, okay, listen, there's no work in Miami, so don't call anybody. Just show
Hmm.
up at their door and ask the receptionist if you could speak to the principal of the firm. Take your portfolio and ask them and show them your portfolio.
Hmm.
So And he said, okay, here's the list of the good architects, here's the list of the mediocre architects, and here's the list of the bad architects. You start at the top and you work your way down. You have to go
Hmm.
to two architectural offices at least every day,
Wow.
and do not come back until 4 o'clock. I was staying with him and his wife.
Hmm.
So that's how I started. I went to like 70 architecture firms. I think I could only count on one hand the people that would not let me get past the receptionist.
Really?
Yes. Everybody else, escorted me to their conference room. I showed them my portfolio, and then oftentimes they would say, "Look, we don't have any work, but go see so and so. They just got a project with the government, and
Hmm.
use our name." And that's what I
Wow.
did.
Yeah.
So they were really nice. Most people were super nice.
Hmm.
And I got my first job. Within a month, I was working. I was making a pittance, but I was working in my field, which was the important part. That's how I started.
Yeah, that's amazing. In construction, it is a I feel like it's a massive industry, but it's also like a small world. And I have noticed that sometimes when talking to, depending on who you talk to, but some subcontractors or some people that you meet can actually be very generous. I mean, the fact that somebody goes and they're like, "Hey, use my name," number one, it probably showed that they had faith in you, probably to start off. And the fact that you did like door knocking and you went to 70 architecture firms, let me ask you that starting experience, um, and having that drive, has that actually helped you in your career? Because
Well,
this
let
is
me
your like 40-year anniversary, right?
exactly no, and let me tell you, Georgia Tech back then, I don't know if it's today is the same way, but back then, what they were proudest of was that you would graduate with persistence.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody else would die. But
Hmm.
Georgia Tech graduates are like, we just keep going. We're like the Energizer bunnies. We just work and work and work and do whatever needs to be done to get where we want to go. We cannot, and that was what I used when I went to because it could have been very depressing. But honestly, I had a wonderful time. I met all these
Yeah.
architects. I knew where all the offices were in town. And once you start, and I do this, I tell people write me all the time. They sent me emails. They want to work for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, and I look at their portfolios, and if they're good, I send them to my friends
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because if they're talented, you
Yes.
want to have talented people in the industry. If their portfolios are bad, I just tell them I'm not hiring.
Mm-hmm.
But if they're good and I'm not hiring, I refer them to people that I think could use somebody.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. And and that persistence, if I'm not mistaken, from me, I've done from a lot of the projects that I've done, one place where I feel like persistence is key is actually in like plan submittal and getting plans approved from the city, because you'll submit a set of plans. I think I've only had one set of plans ever since I've been working. I've been working with my dad now for 10 years. There's only been one set of plans that was ever approved on the first ever review, and that was a big like kitchen and Florida room remodel I did in the city of Miami Springs. That's the only place. Everywhere else, you'll get at least 2 to 3 review cycles, and depending on the city and how organized they are, sometimes even more than that. And so you have to go back and you have to look at all the comments and you have to figure out what they want. And what is super funny is that in all of these cities, they always add this comment at the bottom of their notes, and they'll say, um, there could be additional pending comments.
Yeah.
Like they always leave themselves like a window open. So you can't do like this checklist of 1 through 10. There's always going to be this item number 11 that says, "Hey, we can request more stuff." Even if you fill it. So that probably requires a lot of persistence. At least on my end, I know it has.
I think I had that experience with the city of South Miami. The
Mm-hmm.
plans flew through, but normally it's not like that. In
Yeah.
fact, I have this client in Coral Gables. She says, I just love you because I wouldn't give up. I would push and push. And
Yes.
if it didn't go, if this reviewer didn't do what it was supposed to do, I would call the head guy or I would email the head guy so
Yeah.
that things would get done because if not, they're just going to languish there. And I had, in that
Yeah.
particular case, I even had the structural engineer went on vacation in the middle of my project. How dare he?
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. That's one of the things that I've realized that you have to do with the city is you have to physically, well, one thing I do, I don't think you have to, but you do have to push. I mean, I thank God I have a great project coordinator slash office manager here that she's always like hitting them, but that's one of her main tasks. If I had to do that and be doing project management and all that stuff, it's true. The projects or the plans would just sit there, and I used to be, before I had more of my office team, I used to have to do all of that myself, and it's a nightmare, and sometimes people don't understand until you show them the entire process. But it could be tedious and you have to really be on top of it. And one thing I like to do is I actually like to physically show up at the city. Um, but yeah, Coral Gables is definitely one of those places. And it's funny that you have that characteristic because in Coral Gables, one thing I realized is unless you are a licensed architect, you can't even submit, especially not to an architectural review board, right?
Well, in this particular case, I had a plan runner.
Mm-hmm.
Plan runners can only get so far. And
Yep.
some places they get stuck because
Hmm.
they can't go talk to the head honcho. The head honcho's not even going to, listen to them. But
Yeah.
as the architect, you said, look, this guy's on vacation. Can you have it reviewed by someone else while he's on vacation? Because, a guy's going to be gone 2 or 3 weeks.
Yep.
And we can't just stop the process because you're on vacation.
Mm-hmm.
So when you ask, you get, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. Okay. So let me ask you a question, Maria Luisa. What is one of the biggest mistakes that you see clients making when they're planning out to do a really big home remodel or an addition? Because you work, correct me if I'm wrong, you've worked, the majority of your firm has done a lot of residential for end user clients, and then you've also done some commercial and some government work as well, right?
That's right.
So I'm here we're more focused on the residential end user experience, and that's actually been a lot of your bread and butter. So what is the biggest mistake that you see people making, or clients before they come to you or during the process?
They underestimate the time it takes to do all this. They also
Hmm.
underestimate the cost of all
Hmm.
of this because, especially when you have like an inflationary period like we've had the last several years, I would say the last 10 years have been super inflationary.
Yeah.
And so they don't really understand that that's going to be a problem down the road.
Hmm.
And the time it takes, they want to know, we cannot control the building departments. We can only do
Hmm.
our part.
Hmm.
But for them, they have to be aware that we can do our part, but we can't make these people do what they're supposed to do. And I think and also before they even start, they should really think about what exactly they want.
Yeah.
Like I make them write it down. Like I have this, I call it the must-have list. I
Yes.
must have this because I had a client that he gave me his must-have list, and at the end of the project, he says, "I really wanted to see more roof." But did he tell me that? We're not mind readers, right? We're
Hmm.
not mind
Hmm.
readers. So,
Hmm.
if you tell me I want one of those A lot of those spec houses have that big, huge roof.
Mm-hmm.
That's not my style. But if
Mm-hmm.
he had wanted that and he would have told me that, I would have done it, right?
Yeah.
But in our case, we had a series of different roof types on the roof.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't like one of those big giant roofs that you have on a lot of those spec houses.
Yeah.
And so, being clear on what you want is very important. And that's a mistake. If you don't tell your architect, they're not mind readers for
Yeah.
sure.
Yes. Yeah. So I've noticed that as well, where there's been clients who they talk about the fact that they wanted to they wanted to come up with a like a design, and then they get an idea sort of at the end of the project, and they're like, oh, they seeing something on Instagram, right? Seeing something on Instagram or social media right now has people changing their mind mid project a lot. Has that been your experience?
No, I haven't had that experience. Well, not I haven't had that experience. I had a client who told me he wanted his addition this way. So I worked on the floor plan, I worked on the elevations, I worked on the sections, and then he says, "You know what I told you I wanted? I don't want that. No, I want this other thing." So I had to stop and go back and change the drawings, because he now had this different idea. And I had
Yeah.
one client where I did everything she said. This was a remodeling in Pinecrest. It was
Mm-hmm.
either South Miami or Pinecrest, and she said
Yes.
I had I had everything ready to go to the building department, and she says, we were kind of doing something a little more modern with the architecture,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and she had liked it and everything, and then she says, "You know what? I really like my house the way it is. I just want," because she had like those columns, like how some of those old houses have those steel columns in the front with some kind of you know leaf-like railings and things like that.
Yes.
She says, "I really like the way my house is, so please redo the drawings, but just do them to replace the existing. They're old, but do exactly the way my house is now." So she paid me again. I did it again with the old design that she liked.
Wow. Yeah, that has happened. It's interesting. And going off of that, I know that I noticed when you had on your website, you actually have a process. And one thing that we've sort of created with clients as well is like is a multi-phase process, like a concept design, then like pre-construction, which was where we do like the engineering and construction drawings, and then obviously at the end is the construction, which is that's where we actually are most focused on, right? Because we're a small design build firm, but I'll get something and I'll have Ozzy, who's like my father and the lead designer. He'll do a concept design. We'll create a preliminary budget, and then when we get into pre-construction, we tell all of our clients we're builder-led design build. We're always going to bring during pre-construction an architect and then the engineering team, which is someone like you. Like now you would come in and you would help, build out all of the construction drawings for submittal to the city and to give your input and to just make sure that everything's up to code in the design, because we're both working with the Florida building code, but your requirements of, hey, all these energy calculations and all this, how things are going to flow are a little bit different to how we're using it. We're making sure we're getting the NOAs for the windows and helping with selections and then the actual installation process. But I've seen and heard stories from clients several times where they've come up with designs, and then once the plans are getting ready to go with the city, they start sending it out to different contractors, and it's way over their budget. what do you think causes it? Is it a lack of process? Because I sort of came up with my three phase process of concept design, pre-construction, and construction to sort of weed out that budget issue right at the beginning, as it costs a lot to pay engineers, and obviously you're not going to work for free when you have to redesign everything all over again, and your time is very valuable, right?
I've suggested to most of my clients, if it's a big project and they're not sure about their budget, that we should, after the preliminary design, we should give it to a contractor
Mm-hmm.
and get like a rough estimate of the preliminary.
Mm-hmm.
I'm working with this man now. You know, I just sent him a proposal. We've been back and forth on different issues, and he wanted to know what it was going to cost. So I told him to talk to one of my contractors, and he said, you know, this is a ballpark, you know, per square foot, and of that, I think half of it, or like a very small amount, was the shell, and then
Yes.
most of it is the finishes. So
Mm-hmm.
in that particular case, you know, I told them and I told my clients, you have control of the budget because the face that is the shell is a really small part of the
Yeah.
whole thing. So when you're using very expensive materials, I had a lady in South Miami who wanted to do this tile and she wanted this specific color. And the only tile in that specific, it was a wood, imitation wood tile. And the color she wanted was only available at this one place at $13 a square foot. Okay. So I said, look, it's your money. You want to spend $13 a square foot? Not a problem. It doesn't faze me in the least.
Yeah, yeah. It's incredible how I've seen and I've gone to some of these towel stores, and you're when you're looking at them, depending on where you're getting up to, you're looking at sort of like an average of anywhere between $4 and like $7. But I've seen some of these accent tiles are running as high as $50 to $100 a square foot. And so what does that mean? That means that if you make like a little niche that's like 3 feet by 3 feet or 5 feet by one, that niche potentially could cost the same as somebody else's entire shower tile, you know?
Exactly,
And so,
absolutely.
and so I see that a lot in countertops, right? The stone, and then when people want to start doing a lot of cladding, um, now that does give houses more character, but that's really where you see like prices start going up because you have to build the wall the exact same, right? Like you have to still do your framing. If it's like an exterior wall, you have to do your framing, your insulation, and then your your furring strips. Um, and then now the difference is if you're doing tile, you got to do cement board, which is more expensive. You probably got to waterproof it, which increases the process. And so I think the even beyond the actual tile itself, the assembly becomes more expensive, right? And the process becomes more tedious and more steps. Have you noticed that?
I haven't noticed that the difference in the tile makes any, you know, the price of the tile. In fact, I give them a lecture on this. I said, listen, you can go to Home Depot and you can get beautiful tile.
Mm-hmm.
You can go to, what's that other place?
Floor and decor.
Floor and Decor. You can go to Floor and Decor, you can get beautiful tile. Or you can go to these very fancy, super beautiful tiles
Yeah.
and you can pay a lot of money. But in
Mm-hmm.
reality, I don't think it makes that much difference to the look of the house. You can do a lot with cheap materials, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
You
Mm-hmm.
know, if you combine them, how you combine them, you know, with color and color of walls, and you can do a lot. And you don't have to spend a fortune, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah, it doesn't. I noticed that. a lot of people are driven by what they see online, you know, and sometimes people want to go with specific trends. But I agree. I'm starting to have this conversation with a lot of people where I'm looking at these homes that are, I'll go on Zillow just to see what's in the market, how people are designing homes. And I'll see some homes for sale now in Miami for $40 million. And I'll look at two homes side by side. One of them is going for $40 million, 10, 20,000 square feet. Another one is going for 40 million, 10, 20,000 square feet. And house A, it looks so boring and so bland, and you're like, how did this happen? And then house B is like a masterpiece, and you're like, wow, I wish I could, build this type of house. And they're both probably the same square footage, same price range, very similar locations. You're like, what is making that difference? So what do you think makes the difference between having a very bland house versus a house that is looks beautiful and has character and is just very enticing?
Um, there was a very famous architect, Mies van der Rohe, who was the dean of the School of Architecture at the University of, what was it? Illinois State University, I think it was.
Hmm.
And he said, God is in the details. Okay?
Yes.
God is in the details. So, in houses that look bland, usually they're so monotone. Have you walked into these houses? They're all white or they're all beige, everything's white.
Yeah.
So boring. So I like to add color. Like you could have a base color in a room or a base color for your entire house, but in each room you have one wall that has an accent color.
Hmm.
So it could be really wild. It could be red. You could do a white house and then you go into this room and it has red, this red
Yeah.
wall. Or, maybe it's toned down a little bit. Maybe it's a beige wall or a green wall, but it adds character. Or have you seen, now it's gotten kind of popular. You've seen a lot of houses where they have the wood slats,
Yes. Yeah.
the
Yeah.
wood
Like
slats
that fluted wood or
or
reeded
the
wood.
brick.
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
it, it adds character. And inside, I fall in love with if you ever look at magazines of northern properties,
Oh, yes.
design
Yeah.
magazines, and you'll see inside a house one wall that will have a brick wall.
Yeah.
And it adds such richness to
Hmm.
that room. It makes it really outstanding. And
Yeah.
that's what makes houses different. And also the furniture, bringing in the right furniture.
Hmm.
You could have the same house, the right colors and the right furniture, and you could have the cheapest tile in the world
Hmm.
on the floor, but the right furniture and the right color on the walls and the right paintings. There was a beautiful house I saw. This lady, she was thinking of doing something to her house. I went in this house, and the house was so beautiful. I
Hmm.
asked her, "Did you have a professional do this?" And she said, "No, I did it myself."
Wow.
But everything was color coordinated. The
Hmm.
paintings were beautiful. You know, the furniture was beautiful. It was such a beautiful house.
Hmm.
So it wasn't a professional doing it. It was somebody who had really good taste. That's another
Yeah.
thing that helps a lot if you have really good taste.
Yes, yes. I have this one client that I did this project last year, and he was a single dad, a lot of kids. He had this house, and he and we worked together the entire process. And he, I thought he was almost like crazy, but he was genius. The guy was genius. The way that we did this like kitchen and home remodel, we had in the kitchen, it was a matte blue cabinets with, black porcelain slabs with like white veins. Then he had subway tiles, because he was from New York. And then he had slate flooring, slate. So a lot of like texture. And then we also did like the kitchen also ended up being like two tone, where the main kitchen was this matte, dark matte like blue, navy blue, almost like my shirt. It was like my shirt. And then like this white oak pantry. And then and then it keeps going. Then in the Florida room that connected, we did this bamboo flooring, and then we did a butcher block that we stained the same color as the bamboo flooring. And the walls, it was one of these old like Miami Springs walls that were built with these brick accents on the walls. And I'd never been in a house with so many distinct like colors and features. But I've got to tell you, Maria Luisa, that has been one of my favorite projects ever to have built because of the incredible amount of like different materials and textures that we use. It completely like opened my mind to what was possible, because everything I'd been doing, all these nice modern white with the white kitchen cabinets and the marble countertops and then the white and then the baseboards and the modern doors, and it was getting boring. I'm gonna be honest. It was getting boring. It was
Absolutely.
it
It
was
can be
and
really boring.
and I look now, and I even think about, sometimes I'll look and you talk about like these homes like up north or in different states or in like Arizona or like the West Coast or Colorado. You see like the way they build some of these cabins in the snow, which is completely different to how we build things here in South Florida. But it's just like, wow, this is amazing. This is like all like eye candy. And I think about even sort of like Gothic architecture, and you spoke about Barcelona in Spain, how you studied there and you did architecture, like La Sagrada Familia, you know, down there where I've never been there, but just from seeing the photos, you're like, man, this is like from another world. It's like, yes, God is in the details. This is like, otherworldly or like, and it's amazing. So I've noticed I've actually learned a lot, and I've gotten to experience a lot of different designs. Actually, thanks to my clients, they always bring me a lot of really nice ideas. Not all the time, but many times they bring me really nice ideas. So, what's like one of your favorite client stories where one of your clients brought you something that you had, so much fun doing or incorporating?
There's this house I did in West Kendall,
Mm-hmm.
and they brought me this picture of this house, of this interior, where they had a barrel vault. A barrel vault is a like an arch, but
Yeah.
it's a whole ceiling that's an arch, right? So
Yes.
in that particular house, you came in from the from the foyer, and they're on a golf course. So you look through the the foyer, through the living room, onto the golf course, and there you have a beautiful barrel vault in the foyer, and the hallway that leads to this other hallway that is perpendicular to that hallway, and that hallway also has a barrel vault. So it's a barrel vault that runs the entire length of the house, and then this one that's just the foyer, and then the hallway that goes to the living room. And it was a beautiful detail, just a gorgeous detail. And it made that house really different. How many houses have barrel vaulted ceilings? Not a lot, you know?
No.
So that made that house very special. So to me, it's one of my favorite projects.
Wow. Yeah. We're always looking for it's amazing because architecture, a lot of it is like art, and you're all at least for me, I always want to try something new, right? In every single project. Um, so let me see this. Let me see this. I have a couple of questions. So, what are some of the things, or what makes you feel inspired in the work that you do? Where do you sort of draw inspiration from? I know you were talking about that one client who said, "Oh, I would have liked more roof," and we talk about these spec builders. Who sometimes they go with like a consistent view because they're trying they're trying to a lot of the times target a very generalized audience, right? Versus, which is very different from working with an end user who's building their dream home that they're going to be in for life. Um, so what are some things that you draw inspiration from? What is your style? And how have you seen style develop? I mean, you have 40 years just in this Miami market. How have you seen, the style evolve throughout the
Let
years?
me tell you, I think Miami has improved a lot. And you know where you notice it the most?
Where?
McDonald's. McDonald's, you remember how tacky McDonald's used to be 40 years ago? They were really horrible. But now they're kind of more sophisticated. There's a CBS. Most CBS are super tacky. But there's one on I think it's on Sunset, no, on Miller and 97th Avenue. It's a beautiful CBS.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful. It's very different from their normal CBSs.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that generally Miami architecture has improved. Architecture in Coral Gables has improved incredibly because they
Really?
used to have a lot of that, that Mediterranean architecture. Now they're doing modern everywhere. Pinecrest too. There's just a lot of very modern, beautiful modern houses everywhere. I think that's really nice.
And what do you think has sort of like driven? I think when we were having our preliminary call, you spoke about how, when you were starting off, a lot of the architects that you were studying with, they were really inspired by modern. So, what do you feel has driven this modern movement in homes?
I think it's people have visited other countries.
Mm-hmm.
They're not doing Mediterranean architecture in Spain, okay? They're not.
Mm-hmm.
They're not doing it in Italy. They're doing modern architecture. The architects in all over the world are doing modern. And so people come from Miami, they go see other places and they see that. And they read magazines, magazines. I don't think that up north they have this push to modern that we have. I think
Mm-hmm.
they're still in more traditional architecture.
Yeah.
But for us, modern is a very good style for Miami because, we're clean, we want airy, we want
Yes.
openness. So modern comes really handy in Miami. We don't
Yeah.
want a bunch of stuffy, colonial windows, none of that. We don't want that. We want everything to be open and airy and free.
And just to have sort of a lot of that indoor outdoor living. And that's actually one of the things that a lot of in the designs that we're starting to do, or especially like the large additions, because we do a lot of large additions. One that we did very recently was actually we added like a master bedroom and bath and walk-in closet. We expanded the living room, and so the addition in total was over 1,000 square feet. But in the back, I think like the pivotal, the special aspect of the addition was the fact that we added a gallery. So it was the width of the house, 40 feet, and then 10 feet deep. And you could have an outdoor barbecue, and then you could have a nice dining table and access from the master as well. Um, and I remember I was there on like one of the final inspections, and it was one of these like Florida days where it it had like a almost like a it was cold because it was still winter. It was like it was January or something like that. And I go around the back and I see like this big sliding glass door that we installed. It was 20 feet wide and it was floor to ceiling. So you could see right through from the inside to the outside. And it was for me it was very precious because this client had just had a baby. I have four babies, four four children. And you see this little 10-month-old little baby girl who is just like standing there with her little head up at like the threshold of the sliding glass door, and she was so cute. And I said wow. And I was, even though I hadn't been involved in the project the entire time, that specific moment where you see the clients that They're not worried about air conditioning because it's a cold day in Florida, which is what is a cold day in Florida? In South Florida. But then you
It's
see the little baby
55
there,
degrees.
huh? Yeah, 55 degrees,
65.
and you're just like, oh, like rugged up. And you see this little baby girl, and she's there, and she's like looking at me, and then the client's like, "Ah, Miguel, hey," and I was like, man, that's what indoor outdoor living means. You probably can't do that, in other areas of the country, like winter in Ohio. I have a client, we did a really big addition for him, and he lives in Ohio, and people get like snowstorms, and I'm over here, I've never even seen snow. But that's the thing about Florida is like you could be outside and enjoy the outdoors any time of year. Um, so have you seen with your clients a lot of integration of them wanting to, have more indoor outdoor living?
Yes, I think that's in new housing construction, you need to have some kind of covered terrace. And it has to be covered because here it rains a lot. And besides that, it's so sunny that you don't really want to do, just a concrete slab and then because it's just too, you can't really do a lot with it unless you have a lot of trees. If you plant a lot of trees, you could sit outside. But
Hmm.
if not, if you wanted just to do, sit outside, you want to have some kind of covered terrace area.
Yeah.
And I've had clients have done complete kitchens, outdoor kitchens as well, which is
Hmm.
very nice because you can cook out there. You can have barbecues and things like that.
Yes.
It's, really lovely. This is the perfect place to do it. This is Miami's. Most of the year, we could be outside if we didn't mind the heat.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's so funny. I remember when I was growing up as a kid, Christmas, everybody would go to the person's house who had a nice covered terrace. So every Christmas, it would be, going to my mom's cousin's house, and then, all those memories of everybody just hanging out on like that rear terrace, that nice backyard area, and it would be nice and cool. Everybody would dress up. We wouldn't have to do Christmas indoors. We'd always actually do Christmas outdoors. And then maybe at the end of the night, after the big bellied uncle climbed up to the roof and threw down some some presents, people will go inside and open them up in like the living room, and you know, that was like the Christmas experience, but held outside. You know?
Absolutely. Like at my son's house, they have a covered terrace.
Yeah.
So a lot of times we'll be out there in the covered terrace, or if not, if it's a lot of people, they'll put, by the pool, they'll put all the tables. They'll line up the tables, and because Miami's very very good for that.
Yes.
Except in the this year we haven't had that much rain, but in the summer, I remember a few years ago, what, 5 years ago, it rained every single day. Do you remember that? Every
Oh my
single
gosh.
day
Yeah.
of summer. It was awful. But the
Yeah.
rest of the year's fine, the rest of the year, especially in once September, October rolls around, it's great.
Hmm. Yeah. 100%. And so, Maria Luisa, I just have just one more question because I really want to touch on this personal experience that you've had. You actually worked in construction as a general contractor, or with your husband doing general contracting work for about 5 years before you went full time into architecture, right?
Hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Um, Number one, what you learned during that time and how it applies to how you design projects today. And then what made you sort of get out of building and general contracting and solely focus on architecture?
Well, I was so innocent then. I thought, oh, this looks so easy. I can do construction. These people that do construction, they si se caen comen hierba, I thought. So this is how we started. And soon realized that it's really hard.
Yeah.
Construction's really hard. We had a project at Bayside when it first opened
Hmm.
that the owner went home to Martinique, dove into his pool, hit his head on the bottom of the pool, came up and dropped dead. So in the middle of the project, we don't know what's going on. Nobody knows what's going on. He had ordered all kinds of materials. We get two different coolers being delivered to the site. One of them, the first one in the rides, doesn't fit in the place we had framed out for the cooler. It didn't fit. And we're thinking, what's going on here? Well, because somebody had ordered a second cooler, but the first cooler finally arrived and it did fit. So it was really a horrible experience. The Rouse company, um, at the end, we were all working at the same time because since it had been so disorganized during the entire process, we had to get it done. So what happened was eventually it's very stressful. I found construction very stressful. You
Yeah.
have to have a team of really good people. You have to have subcontractors that we did maybe, I don't know, in 5 years, 10, 15, 20 projects, we had the same mechanical contractor on each project because we found the right person. Electricians, we had a different electrician on each project because every time they would screw it up. So, and it was very stressful, and I just didn't like it. I hated it, actually. I hated it. It was
Yeah.
very stressful.
Yeah.
So when I had the opportunity, I started doing my work for the school board. I did three major projects in what was that, in early 90s. I started doing work for the school board as a consultant, and it was really a lot of fun. There were just big projects. There would be equal to, like, each one was like $5 or $6 million today, and I didn't need to do that construction stuff. I had this really wonderful job, work with the school board. And from there on, I got started getting calls from private clients to do residential work. And I really love residential work. I think it's a lot of fun. I get to meet interesting people that normally I wouldn't meet,
Yeah.
that I wouldn't come across at all. And some of them have beautiful houses. They want to do this addition, or they want to do a new house, or they want to do whatever. And it's a lot of fun. And I've had some wonderful clients.
Yeah.
So I can't complain. And since I know what I'm doing, that's very helpful because
Yeah.
I know what
Yeah.
I'm doing.
Yeah.
Met people that hired unlicensed architects.
Hmm.
And then, because they're so cheap, unlicensed architect. Let's hire some unlicensed architect. And what happens is, when you submit plans to the building department and they start giving you comments, and you don't know how to handle them because they're from Argentina or they're from Venezuela or they're from some other place and they don't know what they're doing, guess what? You know what happens? They disappear. They
Yeah.
disappear off the face of the earth. And so I had one client who actually hired these people, hired, I don't know where he was from, but they then had to hire me later because they never finished the project.
Yeah. Yeah. That's exactly why, for me, in our company, I do market us as a design build firm because we have an in-house architect, but he's not, a sign and seal architect. He draws and drafts, and we're able to come up with a conceptual design. But I always tell our clients, listen, we're going to bring in a third-party architect to come in, review all our work, and then they're going to, once they've checked it, they'll sign and seal it, like someone like yourself. And it's almost like when these doctors like almost like do like a peer reviewed study, right? Like you're not just gonna believe, immediately what this first guy says. You're gonna have a third party. Okay, let's double check this. Let's triple check this because it's like you're saying, construction is time consuming, very time consuming, and it can be very expensive. And the mistakes as well. And you can't always control the city you're right, but we can, as much as possible, control our process, right? But you're 100% correct. I remember about 2 years ago, I had the architects that I was working with very busy, and I was like, um, and I hired this other person who was a licensed engineer to do a set of plans. I give him a deposit. I give him a deposit. And then 2 or 3 weeks later, they come up to me and they're like, "Hey, your plans are ready. Give me the other 50%, and then so I can show you your drawings." And I said, "Give you the other 50% so that you can show me the drawings?" And I was like, "What the hell?" I was like- And I go, and I'm like, "There's no way I'm gonna pay you another dime. Show me what you've made." And the guy met with me. He's like, "Okay, well, I have to meet with you in person, you know?" And I'm like, "Okay, all right, big, tall dude, you know?" And I meet with him, and we're sitting on this bench, and he's opening up these sheets, and I'm like, and this isn't my first rodeo, you know. I've been in this for 10 years now, which is obviously it's not 40 years, but everything that I've done is like field experience. So constantly being involved in projects and speaking to architects, engineers, and seeing the process like real life experience. This guy opens it up, and he's got like, and it's a commercial build out, and he's got like 3 pages and no details. And I'm like, "What the heck is this garbage?" What is this garbage? And then he was like, "Oh, no, well, when we submit to the city, we're going to get comments." And I'm like, the guy had nothing. The guy had nothing. And I immediately stopped. I was like, "Okay, I'm going to eat the loss." And then I immediately went to one of my architects and said, "Listen, I have this emergency rush order that I need you to jump on right away." Um, and that was years ago before we had somebody in house doing the drafting for us, but it's ridiculous. And I got screwed over having that experience, knowing what something correct looks like. I cannot imagine the way that someone who is not experienced in construction, which is, I believe, the majority of the population is not, right? All my time, my clients are like, "This is the first time I've ever done this." And these clients are spending, 300, 500, $1 million on their projects. Residential, just residential. And they're like, "This is the first time I've ever done this. I don't really know about this process." So they're trusting us. I cannot imagine the nightmare that some people have gone through with no
Absolutely.
experience.
There
You
was this
know?
other lady that didn't hire me. It was a house in Pinecrest, and it was like three different additions, so it was a lot of work. And she had hired somebody to do this job, and when the comments came back, the guy disappeared because he was not licensed, right? So then I gave her my fee. She had paid for hundreds of square feet, like hundreds, thousands of square feet of additions. It was like three different additions. One was like a triple car garage, and then an expansion to this over here, an expansion to that. It was a complicated project. It probably was at least $500,000 in construction. She had paid the guy $5,000. So the guy disappeared. And so when I gave her my fee, she goes, "Oh, that's so expensive." Yeah, compared to unlicensed guy who doesn't know anything who's going to disappear on you, yeah, I'm going to be expensive compared to that. Okay.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's incredible. When I started off, my prices were significantly lower than what they are now. But the more that time goes by, and the more that I've seen my prices increase, I'm like, a lot of this has been from experience and adding stuff that it's not that my prices were have become like significantly inflated. It's that I've been able to learn the process enough to make sure that I'm including items that were never even considered before. And so now the price itself might have gone up, but the value has gone up 3 to 5 times more than what the price itself was. So 100%, if somebody, I'll even say it now, do not hire an unlicensed drafts person for plans that are going to be submitted to the hire someone like Maria Luisa, the architect. Okay, please, please. Maria Luisa, um, four more questions. So, number one, what is the best compliment you've ever received?
Oh my God. Well, I don't remember exactly, but there's a wonderful quote in my website of this guy that hired me to do a pet crematorium. It was a building, unfortunately, it wasn't built because that company was bought out by a bigger company that was from out of town. So they never
Hmm.
built it. And what they decided to do was to buy this warehouse in Miramar and convert that into a crematorium. But this was going to be a beautiful building with exhibit areas and all this stuff. And this man said to me, like, I don't remember the exact quote, but it was so beautiful. He said, Maria Luisa is such an experienced and talented architect, and so I mean it was just beautifully written. I wish I could remember it by heart.
Hmm.
And I was just so, and he worded it so well. I can't remember, but it was really a beautiful thing.
And this was this you said on your website or on your
I think it's on the first page of my website. Let me see if I can
oh,
find
okay.
it.
Let's see if I can find it. You have a lot, a lot. Oh my God. I know there's one that says, um, oh my gosh, I got it. Let me read it really. From Peter A. Goodmanson. Maria
Yes.
Luisa is a top flight architect whose work was creative, responsive to business needs, and well managed. We retained her to design a pet crematory and retail space in Miami. Her design was innovative, attractive, and exactly on point for our business requirements. In fact, Maria Luisa suggested improvements to space utilization and process flow that we did not even contemplate, which is probably why they hire you as the expert, right? Furthermore, oh wow, look at that. Furthermore, she is an expert at navigating the political steps necessary to gain county, city, and state approvals, which that's one thing I told my teams, and sometimes I think I was even telling my dad like 3 weeks ago, I was like, you know, some of these plan reviews are more political than they are anything else, you know?
Well, in that particular case, what happened was their original crematorium, which was just a little building, a teeny weeny building,
Mm-hmm.
had been there since the 50s, I think, had burnt down.
Wow.
And
Okay.
now they didn't want to give us the possibility of having a new crematorium. And
Wow. They don't want to grandfather it.
we had to prove to them that that had been a crematorium and that it had actually been built with that in mind. Okay. And to do that, we actually hired an attorney. I didn't hire the owner hired it. And he went through the paperwork back then from whatever it was. And because of that, because it had been permitted from the very beginning, that's why they let us build it.
Yeah. Well, it continues. It says Maria Luisa seems to know everyone, and clearly they too are impressed by her competence and professionalism. I would actively seek Maria Luisa's architecture and project management skills in the future. So that's a
It's
great
a
compliment.
great compliment, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so now we spoke about the best compliment. What is the best advice that you've ever received?
The best advice. Wow, you have these very I'd have to think about. I think the best advice was my cousin, the one I told you at the very beginning.
Yes.
If it hadn't been for him, I probably would have given up, you
Hmm.
know? You know what it's like to be in a recession time and looking for a job? It
Yeah.
was awful. And Poli, my cousin, was very, very on point. He said, "No, you cannot come back till 4 o'clock. You leave here at 9 o'clock in the morning, and you cannot come back until 4 o'clock. Okay? And you
Yeah.
have to see at least two firms every day. And
Wow.
don't call anybody. Just show up."
Hmm.
That was the best advice
Yeah.
because by doing that, the persistence of that, I was able to get a job in a month in the middle of
That's
a
amazing.
recession.
That's amazing. That's amazing. And that is something that that defining characteristic, and probably that experience, it's probably something that we can all take away from, because I know for me, there has been days in this business. I know you said construction is very tough. It is, Um, there have been so many days where I've just wanted to quit or give up, and then I'm like, oh, I'm done with this, and then I'll go to sleep, and then I'll wake up the next day, and I'll keep on going. And so it definitely has its tough days, but thank God for your cousin. you know. Okay, okay, okay. All right. So if you could talk now to 20-year-old Maria Luisa, what would you tell her?
Oh my God. I would tell her not to stress out so much, enjoy life more.
Hmm.
Um, don't worry about everything all the time. It's
Hmm.
not worth it. That's what
Hmm.
I would tell her. Just don't worry so much. Just put one foot in front of the other and do the best you can.
Awesome. 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 Okay, Maria Luisa, let's do this. We're gonna wrap up. Thank you so much. This has been a lot of fun. It doesn't feel like it's been an hour. I don't know about you. It doesn't feel like it's been an hour. But where can people find you? I'm
Okay,
seeing
the
right here.
easiest place to find me is on my website.
Okay. I see it here.
Um,
It's United Architects Inc. That's inc.com. United Architects Inc.com. Mm-hmm.
or you can actually, I think it actually works if you just Google my name,
Okay.
Maria Luisa Castellanos, with an S at
Okay.
the end. If you Google Maria Luisa Castellanos, I am all over the internet.
Okay. Oh, okay,
So
okay, okay.
you can,
I see you. I see you. Let me see. Let me share the screen. You're right. I did let me see. Share different screen. You did. You pop up number one. Registered architect, lead AP. Mm-hmm.
so in there, in any of those links, I'm sure you'll find a phone number or an email and you can contact me. Or
Mm-hmm.
remember the website, unitedarchitectsinc.com. Don't forget the ink because you won't get me. But unitedarchitectsinc.com or my name, Maria Luisa Castellanos.
Okay. And do you prefer phone calls or do you prefer emails? I know that you're very good at communication. Excellent, honestly.
Actually,
Just
I prefer phone calls,
okay.
um, but
And you
but emails are good too. Like sometimes I start conversations with people. Like this
mm-hmm.
man I'm talking to, he's Turkish, although I think he
Mm-hmm.
lives in Miami part time. He writes me emails, and we've gone through the whole process of defining the scope through emails.
Yep. Okay, awesome. Awesome, perfect. And just in case the number is on the website, it's 305-552-5465. And then is there anything, Maria Luisa, that you're doing right now that you're very passionate about or you're having a lot of fun with?
Um, Honestly, I don't know that. Well, I do enjoy my blogs. I
Okay.
like writing.
Yes?
And people call me all the time. They call me, they say, Miss Castellanos, I just finished reading your blog on such and such. Like that happened to me this morning. This man says I was gonna hire this other architect, but then I saw that you have all this knowledge about this particular area of Miami. So I have like I think it's 90 or 90 over 90 blogs. And
Yeah.
you can read all kinds of stuff, all kinds of different issues that come up in
Hmm.
architecture and construction. I write about both. And I like doing it. I like doing it because I like writing. I like writing. So
Yeah.
there's
Not just
tons
that,
of
it's actually helpful,
information.
right?
There's tons of information. If you want to learn about architecture and construction, just read my blog. There's tons and tons of information there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Okay. And then finally, who are your ideal clients? If who do you want reaching out to you to hire you to design and create a set of wonderful architectural drawings for them?
Anybody that wants to do a large, a new house, that would
Hmm.
be my first, a new house, a large remodeling or whole house remodeling or a large addition to their house.
Hmm.
And the other thing I would always love to do, which I did one, shopping center redesigning
Mm.
because
Yeah.
I have one of those and they're just really wonderful projects to work on.
Yeah.
So, but my ideal client would be somebody who wants to do a new house or a large addition or a large remodeling.
Wonderful. Awesome. Okay. Well, Maria Luisa, thank you so much for your time. It has been a lot of fun. A lot of fun indeed. Let me just stop sharing. And oh, is there any last thing you would like to say to the audience before we go? One last message.
Well, that I'm available, that you can call me anytime. If you have a question, you don't have to hire me to ask a question. You can just
Mhm.
call me to ask a question that you're curious about because I talk to people all the time.
Awesome. All right. So thank you so much, Maria Luisa. It has been a pleasure to have you.